Hello, I'm Kathy McCarron, reporter for Tire Business. Thank you for joining us on this live stream discussion on tackling the technician shortage. What can tire and auto repair shops do to find and retain technicians? Joining me are Jennifer Maher, CEO and Executive Director of TechForce Foundation, a nonprofit advocate for students, future techs, working techs, and parents to find resources and promote professional technician careers. Welcome.
Thank you.
And Dan Gilley, president and owner of RLO Training, which provides training for automotive service technicians. Dan has worked as both a technician and service advisor at several independent repair shops and owned an auto repair shop for over 20 years. Welcome.
Thank you.
Just a reminder to please submit your questions and we will answer as many as we can near the end of the session. Now, nearly every tire dealer I've talked to says their biggest HR problem is finding good technicians to fill job vacancies. We've heard this for a few years now. Jennifer, your TechForce Foundation's recent technician supply and demand report claims the transportation technician shortage will continue to worsen. By 2021, new entrant demand is projected to reach about 78,000. By 2024, new entrant demand is predicted to reach 82,000, based on nearly 78,000 replacement positions and about 4,000 new positions. The demand is growing mainly because of job openings created by the retirement of baby boomers, as well as turnover or those leaving the industry. Meanwhile, post-secondary automotive technical programs are turning out only about 37,000 graduates, and some of those don't end up pursuing a job in the automotive industry. So Jennifer, please explain why the industry can attract more young people into the technician field.
Thanks, Kathy. Well, I think we know as an industry, there's a myriad of reasons for why the shortage has become to be. And the numbers that you're reporting, I would mind the audience to know that those are the automotive numbers only. So that when you actually add in the diesel technician demand and the collision repair, not to mention all the other sectors of vehicles, those numbers are even higher and the gap broader. And I look at them all completely in totality because in the end, they steal from each other. If you find somebody who's been a great diesel tech and you can hire them into your automotive, you will. You find a lot of that transferable. But I think, we know it's everything from the stigmas that are outdated stigma of grease monkey, and people don't recognize that these are STEM careers today and all the technology, that these are cars or computers on wheels. And when I talk to the young people and we do focus groups, they say, you know what, you can get me excited about cars and I get all this advancing technology, but get my parents out of the way. They're the ones that are like, heck no, you're not going to do that. You're going to go on to something else. And so you get these gatekeepers, and most of the states across the country start career exploration in middle school. And in middle school, they're starting to say, what do you want to do when you grow up, and explore that. And then the kid goes home and says, well, I kind of like cars and fixing stuff. And that's when either the school counselor or a teacher or some type of an influencer says, heck no, why would you want to do that? And when you get that mom look of like, I don't know about you, but I would pivot. I would find something else that gets a different reaction from my parents. So we have to do better at educating the parents all of these opportunities, and that we say it's no longer a blue collar career, but a new collar career. And that's where the stigmas, et cetera, come in. But it's not just that. It's, we have for 30 years drank the Kool-Aid that there's only one road to success, that everybody has to go to a 4-year university. We've totally killed the skilled trades, technical schools. Got to fix that. Misnomers about what the pay is, what's a path. I don't want to do this forever. Well, you can be a tech and not do that forever, even though you have those skills. So obviously it's a myriad of reasons that we're at this place. It's not a one hit wonder of how we're going to get out of it, but we've done it to ourselves.
And what can independent shops do to help this problem?
Well, I think first of all, you've got to recognize that the people you're hiring now are millennials and Gen Zers. And so this is a different generation. They behave differently than we did. And yet a lot of the shops are run by boomers or Gen Xers. And, we don't necessarily see the world the same way. The next generation that's coming up, they are fast moving. They have all the access to the information via their phones. So they know what pay could or should be. They know, how to connect and find resources. So really kind of starting to look at, what is your culture? Are you a really great shop owner employer? Do you do more than just, do you pay well? Well, let's just start with that, right? Do you pay well? Are you competitive? But then what are all the other things that you do to make that home a great place for a technician? And that's some of it. But again, I hope we spend the next whole hour kind of talking about what can shop owners do to make it. But it's everything, I would say, to get grassroots and help to build the pipeline, help organizations like our nonprofit TechForce bring more young people into the pipeline, get them to explore the career path, learn about what it is today, not what it was yesterday, and nurture them through, and then help to retain them. And I think that's the big conversation about how do we do that, getting grassroots and granular.
Dan, in one of your seminars I attended during Apex a couple of years ago, you made the statement that our industry doesn't nurture its young, it eats its young. Could you explain what you meant by that?
Certainly, and I appreciate that that Jennifer is working really hard to fill the pipeline. The problem that I see is that we are graduating all these young people out of the Votex, and then they go into a shop, and I've seen various statistics, but basically probably less than a quarter of them are still in the industry 3 years later, and that is a result of shop owners and the culture of the shop not nurturing. I get this. I talk to people and I say, well, have you talked to your local Votech to look for people? And they said, oh, well, they don't. I had one person there one time and they didn't know anything. What we forget is that it takes 10 to 12,000 hours to master something. These kids come out of a 2-year program and probably have 1,000 hours of training or hands-on work. So they have 9,000 to 11,000 hours to go. You have some work to do. You're not hiring a technician right out of school. Now, there are some kids that have some talents or have done some other things and maybe a little bit better, but you have a 4-year project to nurture this person and train this person to develop them into a technician. And then as Jennifer also mentioned, we need to understand that the younger generation has a different outlook on life and work than we might have. And so it's not like just get out there and grind away and eventually you'll get it. We need to be talking about career paths and the next steps and how they can grow and how they can contribute and what's the big picture here and everything else. But again, I'm very concerned that we get these kids into the schools and we get them through or they graduate and then we blow them out of the industry before they have a chance to really contribute.
You mentioned one of your other seminars that if a repair shop owner can't find a good technician in a short period of time, he or she should look in the mirror, that people quit bosses, not jobs. Could you give us more detail about that?
Well, so when I started in the industry over 30 years ago as a technician, the reality was that 35 years ago, then actually 35 years ago, I could quit a job at a shop anywhere and find another job the next day. The difference between then and now is 35 years ago, I had 3 or 4 shops in the area to choose from. Now I have 20 to 30 shops to choose from because that's how, so that's what you're competing against. But again, the job is going to be the same or similar at different shops. It's the culture, it's how I'm treated. We again, in our industry, we seem to think we just hired servants, and the reality is we need to treat them like sons and daughters. And there's got to be a whole different approach. I mean, we just need to change our attitude. And if you do have a problem, I will say that again, if you do have a problem finding people or keeping people, it's not the industry, it's you. And so what are you going to change? What does the physical building look like? What amenities do you offer your internal customers? There was a collision group that was buying collision shops, and the first thing that they did was they'd spend about $20,000 on an employee lounge or an employee area. And what struck me was they realized that it was a hedge fund group, and they had enough money to just go out and buy land and build shops, but they didn't get the people when you just build a shop, and they needed to buy these existing shops to get the people. And then the first thing they did was to try to tell the people that they were important. And that's a big part of it too. When was the last time you told your team how important they were and how grateful you were for them?
Right. And I like what Dan just said about, you've got to look around at your brand, not just the logo. I'm talking, what is your environment? This is a generation that has had access to so much information and opportunities. They know what quality looks like. Their expectations are much higher than it was in other generations when we didn't have as much exposure. So when they walk in and they see that even your customer lounge has torn, a couch that has torn, fabric and stuffing out, or it's dark and dingy, what are you saying about how advanced with the technology and cutting edge you are? You're not. You're stuck in the old school. When I've gone into shops at high schools, you find a 1970s television stuck in the corner that somebody forgot was still there, and everything's dark and dingy. And you're like, what brand are you sending? What message are you sending to these young people about this cutting edge career? Well, are you going to be in the nice culinary shop with the stainless steel kitchen and all the beautiful, equipment? Or are you going to be in a dark, dingy, dirty kitchen? So the equivalent is, where do you want to project to your customers and to your employees? And if this is truly about, electrical and hybrids and cutting edge and technology, and that we're smart and we have trained, skilled people, then look around your brand. Same thing as if you want to start attracting females, we're not going to solve the tech shortage until you start talking to 52% of the population. Well, if I'm a female tech and I come in to be interviewed, do I see another female tech anywhere in the building? Do I go to the bathroom and find that it's a guy's bathroom, toilet seat up, and it's something I do not feel welcome? I mean, these are these little nuances of saying, like, get with the today's and emulate that. And everybody knows in workplace that it's not just about what you pay your employees, but how you recognize them, how you value them, the recognitions, the awards. This is a generation that wants and demands work-life balance. Right? They don't work to live, as I think you've said before, Kathy. They work to live. Mm-hmm. And so they want to go out on their boats. They want to go fishing. They want to do hunting on the weekends. So, what do you have? And the last thing I would say, this is a generation that will not work blind. They will not just put their head to the grindstone and plow away for a year, 2 years, 5 years, hoping you recognize them and that you advance them. No. They can jump on their smartphones and they can realize that they've been doing this for a year and a half to 2 years. They're ready for the next step. You treat them like they're moving on. So unless you can say, here's kind of the plan, need you to do this, need you to do that, then we keep progressing you. You've got a pathway here. We're here to support getting you where you want to go. If you're not doing that, you're going to lose them. And as TechForce always tries to listen to our constituents, the technicians themselves, the number one thing we hear is, I did all this work and I got stuck on the lube rack and they let me there to rot. Mm-hmm. And that is just never going to keep us sustaining them after that first year of entrance. If you treat them like they're an idiot and they can't do anything, they will live up to that potential.
Mm-hmm. It's been suggested that regardless of whether they have a job opening, shop owners should always be recruiting. Dan, would you explain some ways a shop owner can be constantly recruiting?
Well, I think, yes, I think it's part of your marketing. I trust that you have a marketing plan to market for external customers, and you need to have a marketing plan for internal customers. And it doesn't mean that you're going to hire somebody right now. We just need to be continually making contacts and growing our network. I know a gentleman here in the Seattle area who has 6 shops, And when I first met him years ago, he had 4 a few years back, and it was one of those things where he has a reputation as being a great guy to work for. And he always had a half a dozen technicians. If he lost a technician, and he doesn't lose them very often because they stay with him a long time, but if he lost a technician or a service advisor, he had about a half a dozen people. He would just call them up and say, hey, I have an opening, and they would give 2 weeks notice where they were currently working and come to work for him. And so I just called him just a couple of weeks ago when I knew I was going to be here to ask him, and he kind of laughed. He says, well, I don't have a half a dozen anymore. I work hard to have 1 or 2. But he always has 1 or 2 technicians and 1 or 2 service advisors that he can call if he has an opening. And again, he doesn't have very many openings because he treats his people well. He pays top dollar. He's got benefits. He appreciates them. They do team building things. They work he treats them with respect and dignity, which again is sometimes missing in our industry. So we need to up our game. That's the short version. We just need to up our game. And you know, Jennifer mentioned the women technicians. Yeah, let's clean up the shops a little bit so that your mother wouldn't mind walking through there, and maybe you'll attract some women technicians, but many shops, I mean, if I had on coveralls, I wouldn't mind walking through, but there's a lot of shops out there that if I had on slacks, I wouldn't enter because they need some work.
Well, if you're going to talk about the women technicians, I mean, the reality is it's less than 3% of all technicians are female. And wow. Yet they have incredible skills. They bring different gifts to the game. Consumers are predominantly women. The men and women more actively trust the females. The ones, all your techs, men and women who like interacting with customers. I talk to techs all the time that say, the reason I do it is I like helping people. And I said, what do you mean? And they said, well, I just love making sure that I know that family is safe, or that I got something running and now they can get to work. They see to them, it's a draw of being able to help people. So how do you get that ROI, that return, if you never get to talk to the customers, if you're just hidden away in the bays? And so, bringing them out, but again, women are going to have a different type of style that can actually help your business. So to not be recruiting and helping young women, but they don't see themselves in the industry, which is why, again, we at TechForce try so hard to put the imagery, the storytelling, the mentors out there so they see themselves in this business. But also, you've got to be an employer with a backbone. You've got to say up front, this is the behavior, this is the attitude we're going to have in this shop. And the minute you see anybody behaving in a way that's going to make that female tech uncomfortable or drive her away, you've got to nip it in the bud. And because again, all it takes is somebody going on and starting to post online that you are not a great place to work, or that you're not supportive of female techs, or that you're not open to all the ethnicities that you want to have being able to employ in techs, and you're done. So you just got to be mindful that so much of this is in your hands as a shop owner. And I am mindful all the time that when it's supply and demand, and if the supply is low, then the prices should be going up. And we need to treat these technicians as the gold that they are. We are building our businesses and our revenue on the backs of their work. And yet we want to, argue over a buck or what have you. And in the end of the day, I think it's the wrong question, which is having the best and the brightest will make your business successful, not how can you be successful at the least amount of input or investment in that talent.
McMahon, the Best One Tire and Auto, one of our best places to work finalists last year, said they've taken the approach of hiring people without experience and offering them training rather than trying to hire someone from a competitor who may have learned some bad habits. Is this a valid approach, and why, Jennifer?
Well, I mean, I think there's, you have to have a lot of kudos for the formal education and the training and the skills that you can pick up. So I do think that there is a wonderful role for the official training. I think, the idea of poaching them from somebody else, you always know that, that can be great and that can be horrible. I tend to say, I love the idea of always growing your own. I think that's how we do both. We recruit more people into the industry by finding young people who are excited and inquisitive, and you take them under your wing, and you show them the industry. You help them to get the training. You help them provide with scholarships and things, and you tell them, how to get through that. You provide them an internship or apprenticeship. Maybe you do sign a tuition reimbursement program with them, that if they go off and they get the training, or you'll help pay that off, or a tool allowance when they work it off. So I think when you grow your own, you can avoid, they pick up the bad habits, you teach them what you want them to know, and you grow the pipeline. But in the end of the day, I still think, recruiting out of places where they have great curriculum, you're going to have to do both, because there's just not enough.
Yeah.
Dan, do you have anything, Dan?
I think that we need to do more of growing your own. Out here in Washington, the Automotive Service Association has a program called iTech, and it is approved by the state apprenticeship program, and it is working very well and doing some great things. At the same time, let me throw out the idea that we are going to recruit from other shops and other industries, and there's going to be needing ongoing training. We used to say that you need to budget 40 hours of training a year for each technician. I believe that number has gone up and probably closer to 80 now. And if you're not planning on sending your technicians to training, then I'm going to tell you that the shops that will take them. In fact, a quick story. I have a client who introduced me a while back to one of his new technicians, and his new technician, he raved about his skills and everything else. And when he first came on board, this gentleman said, "Well, I want to send you to this training," and he said, "I don't know if I can go." And so he told the manager, he said, "Would you find out what that is?" I was surprised because he's so good. Why didn't he want training? Well, he didn't want to go to the training right away because he had never worked anywhere where they paid for the training. And I thought, oh, the guy's been in the industry 10 years, never worked someplace where they paid for the training. So I tell our clients now, when you're putting an ad out, make sure you put in there paid training, because there's technicians that are dedicated so much that they are paying for their own training, which is, it's embarrassing is what it is. Is there any other trade where you have to get ongoing training and you have to pay for it yourself? We need to look in the mirror, because the problem is us, and we just have to raise our game up and improve. So yes, training for new people, training for existing people, and it needs to be, you need to get the checkbook out, because you're going to write a big check. And listen, if you're afraid of where the money's coming from, it's called charge your customers. They're the ones that are getting the benefits from them. They should pay for it. I suppose we could get into
and you've got to promote that, though.
Right.
I want to go somewhere with my vehicle where I know they have skilled technicians. And yet there's a huge disconnect for me, just being a mom. I don't understand when I pull up and they're hidden in the back, if they're good or not. I'm trusting that the front end, and when I start getting suspicion that maybe the back end isn't as qualified as I want them to be, I go elsewhere. So if you are investing, if you have the certifications, promote that. It's kind of like if I go to a doctor's office, they've got, here I am, and here's my degrees, and here's all of that. We're proud of our credentials. I don't see that happen as much as I'd like to see it, that you really tout, because again, that's recognition and honor for me as a tech, that you care, and that you didn't just hire some schmo and throw them out there, and now I have to work with somebody who's not competent. So I think the more you really push that forward, and I think, I just challenge the industry. Why is the number one thing I hear from technicians the word rot? Why do I, rot on the lube rack? Why am I rotting in a bay? Because they won't let me out for training, because if I'm gone, they're not making money on service. And so they don't want to let you out. And yet, if the minute you think the adjective you use is, I feel like I'm rotting, that's our fault.
I would ask them, do you want to be Nordstrom or do you want to be Walmart? Because Walmart's all about price, 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 and Nordstrom's all about service, service, service. So which do you want your business to be known as? And I think that if we're going to pay people correctly, we need to be Nordstrom, which means we need to charge for our services.
All right,
We need
they're
to
called
deliver.
service pays, not
Yeah.
cost pays.
Well, according to a recent Carlisle & Company survey of automotive technicians at car dealerships, just 27% of respondents said they were satisfied with their jobs. The top complaint was they were not getting paid enough for diagnostic work or inspections, which the technicians said represents a significant amount of time. Jennifer, apparently a lot of students who train for the automotive field realize they can earn more money in other fields and end up leaving the automotive industry. Is this a growing trend, and what can the industry do?
Unfortunately, it's a growing reputation. So again, a lot of people don't know what they're going to pay, and it's all over the board. And even in my job, I'll hear plenty of testimonials and case studies where techs can easily break six figures and be making really good money. You hear others where they're a lot more struggling. Yes, it comes down to how good are you, and maybe that can make a difference, just as it can in any career. And at the same time, there's these sweeping generalizations that the students are picking up on the internet, which is you'll make more if you go into diesel than into, a motorcycle technician. You'll make more money with this than that. You'll make more money in general working for one type of a brand versus another type of a brand, or, where those OEs are based as far as German or Korean or Japanese brands, et cetera. So there's all of these, rumors out there, but by and large, it goes back to there's too many instances where your starting entrant tech is making about the same as if you're working at Chick-fil-A. And you had to go to school, you had to get some type of training, most likely, or they're growing their own, but you have to get your tools. I mean, there's so many, hurdles of entry level of just coming into it and then having to prove yourself, like I joke on the lube rack, that it's just, a lot of them look at it and go, I can go to Chick-fil-A and they'll pay for my college education and I can not have to work on a Sunday, or, and so they have a little bit even more of a roadmap of what it takes to work there than what our industry is willing to provide. So I think because we're so big and so vast and everything's over there, we've lost our own talking points, and we are crippled with the, by and large, your starting wage is not as competitive or intriguing. Now, the flip side to it is, our trends over the next 4 years tend to be very acceleratory. So if you're good and you stick with it, then you can actually go, further faster. We look at it like with wind turbine. We see that they hire maybe $16 an hour out the gate, where we might be at $13 an hour. Well, that kid is going to be so much more motivated by the $16 an hour. So we lose them for the same skill set to wind turbine. But if you look over the course of years, it flatlines. You don't really ever accelerate, as opposed to our industry where you can. But that's an education, and who knows those stories. So I think I would say, we've got to get a story out there that's more consistent. And yet I think it's also, we have to look at what do we do to not make these hurdles so big for kids to get into this career.
Right. Dan, you
Right.
kind of touched upon that, but how do independent shops afford to pay higher wages for their technicians and still be competitive?
Well, again, I guess I'm going to say competitive with who, because I can call around town and find labor rates that are really low, and I can find labor rates that are really high. And the reality is that, do the customers do that? I don't think so. The customers are looking for a package that includes parts and labor, and we're not we're just, I think we're afraid of the 3 or 4% that complain about prices, and we forget the 95% that don't. But the thing that Jennifer was talking about there, the $13 or the $16 an hour, the scary thing is then we're also competing against other trades. And the Seattle Times a few months back was running a full-page ad from the Electricians Union, and it said, "Do you want to make $47.50 an hour? We can show you how in 3 years." They have and it was kind of what you were talking about, the career path. They had a 3-year apprenticeship program, and as a journeyman electrician, you make $47.50 an hour plus benefits. And so, yes, I know technicians that make $47.50 an hour. They don't make it in 3 years because our industry is a little tougher than that. But they're going after the same kids that we want, which are the ones that don't want to go to a 4-year school, that want to work with their hands. And so I think we just have to step up. Now, does an electrician cost more than an automotive technician? Probably. So what? Why can't we raise our rates? What are we afraid of? The do-it-yourselfer is kind of history. The cars are such. Listen, I was a journeyman technician, and I wouldn't attempt to do anything on my car today other than change the oil. And I don't want to do that because I'd make a mess of it. But the reality is that our cars are so sophisticated that we need really skilled people to work on them, and we need to charge for that. The copier in our office broke down. It's a big copier. I think it was about $8,000 when it was new. So it's now 10 years old and it breaks down. Now you can't buy any cars for $8,000 new. And then 10 years later, what are they worth? But here's the thing, that this guy showed up to fix our copier and he was carrying all of his tools in a briefcase. Now, no technician can carry all their tools in a briefcase. They've got $50,000 worth of tools. He shows up, he works on our copier, he repairs it, he gives me a bill. Now, I'll bet that he probably went to about 2 weeks of training to be a copier repairman. And he might have been doing it for a few years. But the reality is that the 2 weeks of training is a whole lot different than the 5 years of training and ongoing. And then the other thing was, when he handed me the bill, it was $150 for the first half hour, which was travel time. And then it was $220 an hour in 15-minute segments while he worked on the copier. And I'm thinking, I got shops around here that have million-dollar facilities with hundreds of thousands of dollars of equipment that are afraid to charge $120 an hour. And this guy's at $220 and he carries his tools in a briefcase. Come on, folks. The problem is us. And we need to, again, what are we afraid of? We need to pay people well. They need a livable wage. I was fortunate enough before this pandemic started to take a trip to Ireland. Highly recommend it. You can see Gilley is an Irish name, but anyway, we went to Ireland and we went to the Waterford Crystal Factory where they make these beautiful crystal things. And my wife drugged me there. I was not excited about going. However, once I got in there and I saw these craftsmen working and making this crystal, it was very interesting. So I asked the tour guide about the apprenticeship program, and it's a 3-year apprenticeship program to become a crystal person, and then they actually have a 2-year program in addition to that to become a master. And I said, well, really? So how do they get paid on this 3-year program until they're a journey level person? And she looked at me like I was, what a stupid question that was. She says, well, they get paid the same as the journey people. And I said, they don't know anything when they start and they get paid the same as the journey level people. And she says, well, yes, they have to live, don't they? I thought, oh my gosh, we're all about, let's hire them for $12 an hour. And if they're any good, maybe we'll give them $12.50. Hold it, they have to live. They want to move out of mom's basement. Let's pay them a livable wage charge the customer, now it's not as much as a journey level, but charge the customer and let's move on with life. We just have just because we've always done it that way doesn't mean it's a good way to do it.
And I think be mindful, you hit the nail on the head, Dan. Other industries include our own. So I hear more and more in the diesel space of them starting to up the wages, right? Because they know the supply and demand and that they need to invest. So again, you're going to have people who are auto techs switching. So, in the end of the day, we're losing our own, sometimes even like in an automotive, to our own sectors or to other sectors. They're going into construction. If you love working with your hands, these are transferable skills. Right. And once a tech, always a tech. So if you know how to do this, you can live and work anywhere. So why wouldn't you? And again, this is a generation of work-life balance. They're going to be like, hey, I'm moving across country because I feel like it now. And they can. So if you don't have that relationship and that investment with them, yes, you always run the risk that you've invested in somebody who will leave. That's nature. All of the research shows that these younger generations are going to change jobs and careers more rapidly. But you need to be mindful that they talk, they post, there becomes a permanent record about who you are, both to consumers as to whether they should use you or whether people should come work for you. So being invested in having a great relationship with your techs matter with that person, but as well as with all your constituents, because it's all transparent now.
It was interesting. A study was done about 3 years ago on, basically it was what other industries could automotive steal talent from. And they did this big study and they came up with the proposal that HVAC technicians have a lot of transferable skills. The problem is that HVAC technicians make about the same amount of money as automotive technicians, so that what's the incentive to leave? And by the way, they don't have to spend $50,000 on their own personal tools to come to our industry.
So it's actually not even apples to apples.
Right, and so we are losing technicians to HVAC instead of grabbing them from HVAC because the skills are transferable, or a lot of skills are transferable.
Well, and think about this. TechForce gives about 25% of all the scholarships and grants we get to go on to technical training. We give to veterans. Why? Because veterans are transitioning from careers while they're deployed to jobs here at home. And yet they often look at me and they say, it's amazing that I can work on billions of dollars of equipment when I'm deployed, but when I come home, I can't touch your Kia. And so we force them to go back and get the certifications in the education. And I get that, right? But again, it just sets up this whole idea of, people have these skills. Well, I can tell you every industry is going after those veterans, everybody. So, it's this gap is only going to get worse. And it's not just because of the retiring boomers, but it is because there are more and more cars on the road and they're aging. And so it's going to make repair important. And as you said, no longer are they learning in the garage with dad or grandpa or mom. They can't pick up the hood without electrocuting themselves on a lot of these cars. So most of us go, mea culpa, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to take it to somebody who does. But I'm constantly blown away. How can we show ads on television every single day about how advanced and technologically savvy all of these cars are, but then we turn around and treat the people who probably keep them rolling like somehow it's no brainer? It is an incredibly talented skill set. We need to treat it like that.
Yeah, you line up 100 people and find the ones that can take something apart and put it back together, and there's very few of them because they're wired differently. And the thing is, like you talked about the transferable skills, automotive technicians take apart their washing machine at home when it quits working and repair it. They can fix the neighbor's boat. I mean, they can, because their brain works in such a way that they know how they can look at something and figure it out. And again, we don't recognize that what an incredible gift that is, or what an incredible talent that is. Right. And we need to Well, we need to, first of all, tell them how grateful and how impressed we are with their skills. And then secondly, we need to compensate them for that.
Well, and I'd love to, because we talk a lot about the retention, because you're right, we eat our own, we blow them, get them in the front door and we blow them out the back door by treating them poorly. But how do you build this pipeline? Because again, that is part of it, that if we don't have more of a pool to hire from, then we're all going to be in this competitive, I call it the running of the bulls. You got one qualified tech and they're all on top of that one person. But it's about backing up and saying, I put, again, my mama bear hat on, and I think we have done a horrible job in this country of telling kids that there's only one road to success and that you're smart and you're not. And you need to sit still, don't touch, don't move. And that is not how that kid is wired. Our kids who make incredible automotive techs are the ones who want to get the wiggles out. They are the ones who want to get hands-on. They're project-based learners, and yet they don't fit into that traditional mold. And yet they're intelligent. And this idea that your intelligence can only be measured with the SATs, instead of saying tactile intelligence, I can't take it apart and put it back together. I got 15 leftover pieces. I mean, I cannot do it. And I think I'm smart. I'm smart in a different way. But that's not what the message these kids get. So most of the time, TechForce gets a lot of students going on to post-secondary. They don't even want to fill out an application for a scholarship, because why would I ever get a scholarship? Nobody ever told me I was exceptional, and that's why it's great, because they're only the ones in the pool and they are exceptional. But you as a shop owner, getting involved with your local high school auto shops and going in there and reinforcing that this is a talent that's in demand, that it's needed, that it is respected, that it is a form of intelligence, that in and of itself can go a long way into bringing people who recognize that, my God, this is my God-given gift. I am good at this, but I didn't realize it was valuable. Just making that connection can actually give a lot of kids a future that's bright.
So I want to challenge the people that are listening, or it's right now, or going to listen to this in the future. How many of you know the name of the vocational instructor at your local high school or VOTEC? Because if you don't, then you are part of the problem. The reality is that we all have to get involved. There are every program that I'm aware of has to have industry advisors tied to it to keep things going. And they are always looking for industry advisors, because we're sitting on the shelf or sitting on the fence. Get involved with your local high school, your local VOTEC. There are marketing materials that are put out by different associations and in our industry that are developed for elementary, middle school, and high school. And we need to start in the elementary schools and the middle schools and get the word out about, you want a career in tech, automotive is the way to go. Again, I want to challenge those out there. Get involved in your schools. Get involved in the process. We got to recruit. And yes, so it might be 10 years before that person that you recruit comes into our industry or contributes to our industry. But we all need to do something now so that 10 years from now, we will still have an industry.
Tire dealers have told us that these new technicians are hard to keep long-term because many entry-level applicants don't see the work as a career. K&M Tire, another best places to work finalist, has taken the approach of giving their employees a measurable way to show career progression. And the company has implemented a tier system to give an employee a tangible goal to pursue. And when they hit certain metrics, he or she attains another level of their goal and their pay increases. Jennifer, you once told me that employers need to provide their employees, especially Generation Z employees, with a career plan within the company. Why is this so important?
Because Gen Z, or as they're now calling themselves the Gen Zoomers, they have and expect information. They have grown up with information. So when you have them in the dark working and they don't understand what the roadmap is and what the game and the rules are, they don't want to play. So again, they're gamers. They're a gamer generation. They're about you do you. They don't care what their peers think. Generation X, I cared about what label was on my jeans because my friends were judging me by what label was on my jeans, right? That is not this group. You do you. So they want to do and work on what makes sense for them. You have to have a roadmap, and it's okay that it's customized. It should be. For your shop, you decide you can afford to do these things, but you have to be able to share that with them. I expect for the first year, you master these skill sets. When you've showed me that you master it, I'm going to be able to move you up and charge my clients for the work that you're doing then. So therefore, I'll increase your pay and I'll allow you to go to a training after. Map it out, make a deal, show them what the game is. And if they don't have that map and you don't have some thinking about it, then they know or believe you've never thought of it. And if you've never thought of it, then you don't have their best interest and they're out of there because there's too many other people who can show them that roadmap.
Yeah. Dan, do you have some other ways owners can provide a career path?
Well, I think that's, yes, you have to think about it. You have to have you need a training budget, you need a training plan, and I think you need to show that you're interested in them. So if you sit down and we talk, what are your goals, both in the business and in life, and how can working here help you achieve both those personal goals and those professional goals, then at least we're working together. And I think the biggest thing is you need to talk and communicate. I think Jennifer said that very well several times, is you have to communicate. It's not, I'm here for the paycheck and I'm going to work 40 hours and it's, well, what else is there? I want to do something. I want to be part of something bigger than that. We want to serve the community. We want to help people. We want to fixing cars is part of it, but what else can we do? And so again, do you have a mission statement? Do you have a culture that you're proud of? And do you really care about your employees? And if you do, then are you communicating with them and asking what you can do to help them with their goals?
I love that. And I want to reinforce that all the research we know is that this is the most socially conscious generation since World War II. I've spent 30 years in cause marketing, right? How to affect causes. You see the obesity epidemic rise, you see the pink ribbon rise, you see, all of these different things have different peaks and valleys. This generation understands the environment, they understand causes, and they want to make an impact. So if all they do is come to work every day and are stuck rotting on a lube rack or in a bay, and yet they're like, so many of them are motivated by helping people, but they never get to see or feel any of the people they're helping, or they're never taken out of their bay to be able to engage. And if they never go to a school and see the up and coming next generation, and they can't talk to the younger you, and they're not involved in the community anyway, again, there's a disconnect for them. And those things, when you can connect those dots, it does make a richer work environment beyond the paycheck. Because I know I'm here for the paycheck, but I also love those kids at that school we partner with. And, and I love giving back. And I love the fact that our customers rank us #1 every year as the best in this community. Those things matter more than most employers would ever know, because again, it didn't matter so much to the boomers, and it didn't matter as much. It got more and more, but it is off the charts right now as far as appealing to their hearts and not just their wallets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for the past few years, or 2 years, I should say, Tire Business has held the Best Places to Work contest, which is based in part on employee surveys. And the finalists all had one thing in common. They showed appreciation to their employees, verbally and through awards and recognitions. And many of them made their workplace fun, like with employee parties, fundraising events, contests, things like that. What are some of your suggestions for shop owners to keep technicians happy and avoid the high turnover? Jennifer?
I would say one is we've learned nothing more than through COVID that, life's short. So have fun and like what you do. So again, I think even more than ever, People have learned now that we are essential workers as technicians. And so that's, again, a positive where young people are looking around going, who's unemployed and who's not. That's going to fare well, but you've got to have fun. And it's things like, even just the tuition reimbursement or the tool program. I mean, we set it up that you have to buy your own tools because why? Well, they're too expensive and we don't trust you. We don't trust that you're not going to steal the tools if we give them to you. Well, that's a negative start to begin with. So I do think, it's almost like, how do we start to inject the fun, the sense of humor? This is a hands-on, intelligent situation. And, a lot of these students, 60% of the students that we see at TechForce coming through are first generation post-secondary applicants. Their parents did not go to a college or have those degrees. So there's a pride here in this career path that they need help celebrating and letting their families know how respected they are. So I would include, looking at their family life, a lot of single parents. Again, I see a lot of single mothers trying to come into this career path. So what are you doing to recognize their life?
Dan?
How about say thank you and mean it? And it probably should be daily or multiple times daily that you should thank them for their hard work, for what they did for Mrs. Johnson's car, what they did for the shop. Again, which is part of the culture that we're trying to cultivate as a culture where we celebrate wins and we celebrate the fact that we're all working together. But I think that the easiest thing the shop owners can do is say thank you and mean it. And I don't think that is said enough.
Yeah. Thank you both for all this information. Now we will take some questions submitted by our viewers. The first one, you've mentioned that you need to change the culture and appearance of the shop. If we have limited funds, what do you recommend to do first to have the largest impact?
I would say as far as making the shop attractive, and Jennifer mentioned it, is it a dark dungeon? A lot of shops, I could probably bring a big dumpster in there and throw away about half the stuff in the shop. So is it clean? How about the restroom for the technicians? I've seen these beautiful restrooms for the customers, and then the technicians have a, whatever you want to call it, a pit. Yeah, you might as well have a Santa can out back. But what are you doing to make the environment where they work in, which is it should just be clean. That's the first thing. It should be clean. And then again, I was at a shop and a technician, I was talking with the service advisor of the front counter, and this technician comes out from the back and walks through the waiting area over to the coffee machine to get a cup of coffee. And I thought, why don't the technicians have their own coffee machine? What is that, $20? Or put them, there's some just amenities that make sense. A coffee pot, water, maybe a little refrigerator for them to put their lunch in if they a place for them to sit down when they eat lunch instead of sitting on the alignment rack because it's the only place that they can. Again, just some really simple things. What would you like if you worked there all day? I mean, you spend 40 hours a week or more in this building. What can we do to make it comfortable for the most important people that we have, our internal customers?
I always ask, if you don't have a window from your customer's viewing area into the bays, why? What have you got to hide? And so, if you can crash through a wall and put in a window so that you open up those lines of communication, even if they're just visual, that your customers see your trained technicians, that you're proud of them, that they're not in dingy clothes, but in really awesome uniforms, that instills a sense of pride. So I look at the uniforms, I look at that. I look at number one is lighting, because lighting can change the atmosphere completely. Are you under, horrid fluorescence all day long, or really great shop lights where you can see what you're doing? I came out of Marriott hotels. The number one gripe session always was temperature control, right? So if they're sweating their butts off and they're miserable and they're dripping with sweat, well, I'm looking through that window and I'm like, ew, so I mean, I'm thinking ew and they're feeling ew. So, what is your ventilation? What's your air and temperatures? Yes, bathrooms. I've heard always tools accessible. Do you have the rolling carts by the cars? Are they having to walk all the way across, and they're wasting time and money? Those types of things. You hear it from millennials all the time. They tell me to put my phone away. Well, you are asking them to cut their arm off and get rid of it. And they can't do that. They are glued to their phones because it is their culture. They know that phone is how their kid at school would reach them in an emergency, or their spouse. That's how they might Google something they didn't know so they don't have to look stupid. I mean, it is an extension of them. So you have to own up to them, give them charging stations. And then the last thing I'd say is look at your imagery. I see so many shops and the cars and the photos that they have on the walls. Either they have the babe laying across the roof, the hood. And now I'm looking at it going, I don't want my female customers seeing that. And I sure as heck don't want to send that message to my female techs. Get rid of it, right? And look at, and if all your imagery is old and outdated and cars from the past, unless you're a restoration shop, you look outdated. So those are just a couple things.
Is it better to pay technicians a flat rate or pay a salary? Dan?
So the simple answer is it varies. As a former technician, I would not have wanted to be on flat rate for the first 2 or 3 years while I learned, because I would have starved to death. Then when I started getting things figured out, that would be the only way I wanted to pay, because that means I got paid the most. So that was my approach. But at the same time, I had, when I had my shop, I went to my technicians and said, guys, if I put you on flat rate, you'll make more money. And at the time, they were all married and had young kids at home, and they said, no, we need the guarantee. So I paid them a guarantee with a bonus, and it was what was best. I mean, again, we worked out. It actually saved me money because they would have made more, again, as flat rate techs, but that was their choice. So different techs respond differently, and there are a lot of technicians whose money is not the number one motivator. And if you're trying to push that hot button and it doesn't work, then you probably need to look someplace else. So, and listen, you can have different pay plans for different. If I went back in the shop now if I'd been working as a tech all this time and now I'm getting older and slowing down, well, no, now I don't want to be paid flat rate. Now I want to be paid for my knowledge, and maybe you're paying me a salary to train somebody else. So different phases of the career, different people, different personalities. I think that you need to figure out what's the best pay plan for each technician. And that's the beauty of I think that we're talking to independents here. You don't have to pay everybody the same. You don't have to use the same pay plan for everybody. You design a plan that works best for them, and then we move forward.
Okay, well, thanks. That's all the time we have. And thank you for joining us for this discussion. And thank you to our panelists, Jennifer and Dan. A recording of this live stream will be available tomorrow afternoon at tirebusiness.com. We have more live streams planned for 2021 to discuss industry issues, so be sure to check out upcoming events as well as the latest industry news and information on our website. Thanks again for watching, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy. Thanks, Dan.